Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Yuuei Survival Guide. This will be Part 8, the second half to Chapter 4. It was Friday now. Izuku had survived the first 2 weeks of school. English class on Wednesday, where he'd gotten help from Present Mike, had really given Izuku a lot to think about. He'd been in a near-constant state of internal debate over whether or not he should follow Oboro's advice and take a chance on Aizawa-sensei, potentially find another ally, or whether he should just let it go to protect himself. It doesn't feel like there's a right answer, no matter how hard he looks at it. He's still scared. He's scared of the thought of asking for help. There's still that inkling of fear in his chest when he thinks about talking to the teacher who was actually going to expel Izuku on that first day of school. But that subconscious thought has slowly been easing the more time he spends with his teacher in class. The man truly was genuine in how he taught them, even if he was stern and terrifying. Izuku does think he wants what's best for them, it's hard not to let the negative interaction overtake the positive ones. Oboro still hadn't let up on his badgering to get Izuku to talk to Sensei about his new quirk, but the ghost had, thankfully, stepped back from interjecting himself into Izuku's classwork. It was a compromise for the time being that Izuku didn't mind, even if Oboro could be exceptionally annoying to be around when every second word out of his mouth was something about trusting and talking to Aizawa-sensei. It's still better than having the ghost cheat for him. He knew his friend was just trying to help, understood that better after the English class incident days prior. But that didn't mean Oboro was going about it the right way either. Oboro had made good points, and he'd been right about Present Mike being a good guy. Oboro had nothing but good things to say about Aizawa-sensei too, but Izuku still found it hard to believe. Present Mike, he'd at least always thought was a genuine guy, from his radio show persona to all the fundraising he did with his fame for good causes. Even a quirkless scholarship program that Izuku had been ecstatic to hear even existed when he'd been just 10 years old. Present Mike had proved to be exactly what Oboro had insisted he was, exactly what Izuku believed him to be, even in a school setting. He'd even stayed after school on Wednesday after the test to give Izuku a little bit of extra help with the English concepts they were learning. Izuku was already more confident in his ability, and Present Mike promised they could arrange additional after-school or over-lunch extra help sessions should Izuku ever feel as overwhelmed as he had during the test. "All you gotta do is speak up, listener," Present Mike had assured. And it was probably the nicest a teacher had ever been to him. Like, ever. And it helped. Izuku can admit that. He'd always been good at actual schoolwork. He'd had top grades with Kachan at their junior high, but even he knows he's already falling behind in his hero courses. And that won't do. Oboro had been right. It was easy to get overwhelmed with so much going on around you. An entire morning of core classes followed by rigorous heroics training was a lot. Aizawa-sensei had made it clear that he was not afraid to expel those who didn't meet his expectations, and Izuku's terrified that one of these days his grades will get a little too low, or he'll not perform to his teacher's standards in heroics class, and the man will just drop him from his class. It keeps him up at night sometimes. Oboro had assured him that the man wouldn't be so callous, that he sees potential in Izuku, but he's still so scared. They don't spend every day working with their quirks. It's a one-on, one-off kind of deal. Aizawa-sensei had told them it was just as important to know the fundamentals as it was to actually work with their quirks during training. But Izuku thinks the man is actually just letting them have a bit of a break between intense quirk usage and physically tiring battle exercises. Izuku had appreciated that approach as his burnt arm continued to heal up. It had been a rather slow process, honestly. By the end of the first week, he'd been allowed to take the bandages off of it for it to breathe. but that didn't mean it didn't look bad. And it felt bad sometimes, too, when he was sweating or when his costume rubbed on it. Sensei always looked at the mark distastefully when it was visible, so Izuku tried to keep it covered. He hadn't really gotten hurt again, not like he had during that first exercise at least. But, to be fair, they hadn't really had an opportunity for him to injure himself again. He hadn't been forced to use his quirk like he had during those battle simulations. Truthfully, they spent a lot of time in the classroom. More time than Izuku thought they were going to in a heroics class. They'd selected a class representative, Ida, and a vice representative, Yaoyorozu. Well, to be fair, Izuku had originally been elected for class representative, and boy had Oboro laughed at that, to the point it just made the embarrassment he already felt all the more worse. He'd flushed brighter and barely stuttered through his words. Thankfully, it was decided that Ida was better suited for the role. Izuku wholeheartedly agreed. But besides all that, they worked mostly on assignments, like writing about their own quirks, the strengths and weaknesses of their quirks, their limits, theories of what they could potentially accomplish when given proper quirk training, and letting themselves surpass the limit that had been placed on them in previous grades. That's not to say that they don't do anything with their quirks. They did. Aizawa-sensei was still trying to gauge what they could do, so they did some sparring in pairs. Izuku and Kachan on either sides of the gym with their appointed partners. And additionally, individual work where they could put their quirks in the spotlight. Izuku tried hard not to use one for all too much because he didn't really want to accidentally hurt anyone. He could see that Aizawa-sensei had taken notice of his hesitance, but the man hadn't said anything about Izuku keeping his distance from the other students or trying to blend in with the shadows when they were showcasing their quirks to their teacher. The man hadn't brought it up yet, but Izuku could feel the man's observing gaze on him. Izuku knows he's miles behind his peers when it comes to quirk work. He was afraid of his new quirk, afraid to harm someone else or hurt himself bad enough that he needed to see Recovery Girl again. Afraid he'd do something that would make Aizawa-sensei cut him off, deem him unteachable, and a liability. Oboro promises that Aizawa-sensei would never do that, but Izuku's still terrified. The ghost is still on Izuku's case about telling his teacher about how recently he'd gotten his quirk, promising that it would make all the difference in the world. But Izuku had been putting it off, slipping out of school the moment classes are over, before Oboro has a chance to pressure him into finding Aizawa-sensei after hours. Oboro is wise to his tricks, following a step behind Izuku as he flees out the doors with his arms crossed tightly over his chest disapprovingly, but there's really not much a ghost can do about it. Izuku is afraid, but he knows he has to. He either needs to give Aizawa-sensei some information that'll help him understand Izuku's position, let himself be helped, or he's going to fall behind and risk getting booted out of the class like every other student who doesn't meet Aizawa's expectations. He knows there are thousands of kids who'd kill for a spot in Class 1A, so he'll be damned if he lets this slip between his fingers because of his own fear or pride. That said, he still doesn't know exactly how he's supposed to go about this. Even now, as he stands outside his homeroom classroom after classes have finished for the day, he knows what he has to do if he wants to survive this school year, knows what's right. He just needs to, well, work up the courage to face Aizawa-sensei. They'd been working with their quirks during training that afternoon, so Izuku's pretty tired from that. It had been individual work, pushing their quirks as hard as they could under Sensei's orders. The man had stood back with all might, observing them from his spot. His attention lulled from student to student, which included Izuku practicing activating One for All, and then forcing it off. And he knows it hadn't been impressive in the slightest, but if he can't master something as simple as that, then what's the point? His peers had all been quick to disappear after they'd all finished changing when classes were finally let out for the day. Uraraka had been waiting for him outside of the boys' changing room, offering for them to walk to the train station together. But Izuku had waved her off with a smile. It would be too easy to forget his intentions and just leave with his friend. but he's well aware that's just self-sabotage at this point. He'd seen the look on Aizawa-sensei's face during training, when he'd been watching Izuku. He's running out of time. So Izuku had smiled kindly at Uraraka and had taken off towards the classroom while she'd simply shrugged and caught up with Asui to walk out together. The halls are surprisingly quiet, for so soon after classes have finished. Izuku had slowed his pace, a small part of him hoping that the longer he takes to get to the classroom, the better chance he'll have that Aizawa-sensei would have left already for the day, and he could avoid this altogether and have it not be his fault because he'd tried, right? That would shut the ghost up. He doesn't really want to let his teacher in. Doesn't want to put himself in a position like this, but he knows he has to. His peers are quickly pulling ahead of him as they get better and better with their quirks each lesson, and it feels like they're starting to leave him in the dust. If he doesn't change that now, he'll forever be stuck at the bottom, even with One for All. And he can't let that happen. He can't be a useless Deku anymore. Not when he finally has what it takes to match his classmates, to be someone better, someone stronger. He needs to make All Might proud. And if he can't do that, then maybe Aizawa-sensei was right about him that first day. He really would be nothing more than a waste of a quirk, a liability. Izuku's hands tighten into fists at his sides at that thought, lingering outside his homeroom classroom. He lifts a fist to knock, but hesitates. He's not sure why he can't seem to force his knuckles down on the door to alert Aizawa-sensei, if he's even in the classroom, that there's someone there. His chest feels tight and his hand trembles where it hovers by the door, poised to knock. His throat feels dry, even when he swallows nervously in an attempt to wet it. He wonders if he'll even have a voice to speak with at this point, stomach churning the longer he stands there like an idiot. Finally, Izuku squeezes his eyes shut as he works up the courage to lower his knuckles onto the door. But when he goes to knock, the hinges on the door wheeze out as they're slid open instead. Izuku freezes, hand pausing in the air for a long second before dropping quickly to his side as he takes a quick step back and away. He's acting like he just got caught doing something bad, like a child getting caught stealing a cookie after they've been told no, when he knows there's nothing wrong with seeking a teacher out after class. Or, at least he's pretty sure there's nothing wrong with this. Is there? Izuku's eyes snap open when he realizes they're still closed, and only then does he see Aizawa-sensei hesitating in the doorway. The man looks about as surprised as he ever has, one eyebrow cocked in question, and eyes widen slightly. But it just fills Izuku with a sense of dread. Sensei. Izuku stumbles out, head bowing. He hopes his voice didn't come out as a squeak like he fears it had, but it probably did, considering Aizawa-sensei's eyebrows bunched together in subtle confusion, lips curling downward in a slight frown. Midoriya. The man greets slowly in return, eyeing the student from head to toe as if gauging whether or not he needs to escort him to Recovery Girl for some injury he'd gotten between classes, ending minutes earlier, and this point. It's actually a fair assumption, considering Izuku's growing track record in just 2 weeks of classes, but at the same time, it's got a flush of embarrassment burning into his cheeks at the insinuation. Ouch. Was there something you needed? Or do you hover outside of all of your classes after school? Izuku's heart hammers against his ribcage anxiously. He's pretty sure his blood pressure has gone through the roof. I was wondering if I could... If you'd be willing to meet with me. Like, now? I'd like to talk to you about my, about my quirk. If that's okay with you. Or if you're busy now, that's fine too, I'm afraid I'm getting left behind. Sensei, for his part, waits patiently for Izuku to finish his train wreck of a request. Only when the teen has gone quiet does the man seem to shift his stance, eyes flicking down to Izuku's arm that had been in a sling those first few days of school. But his gaze drifts back up to his face before Izuku can self-consciously tuck his arm out of sight behind his back. There's a thoughtful second between them both before Sensei gives a faint nod. "I've got some time." Izuku nods his head gratefully, taking another step back so Aizawa-sensei has some room to step out of the classroom too. Except his teacher seems to pause before doing so. The man looks thoughtfully back into the classroom before glancing back down at Izuku. "Would you prefer to talk in the classroom, or one of the conference rooms in the teacher's office? I doubt anyone else will come looking for me now, but the conference rooms are soundproof." "Oh, the conference room, please?" Izuku requests meekly. Izuku's actually relieved Sensei suggested the privacy of the conference rooms. Izuku's not supposed to be telling anyone about One for All, but here he is. The least he can do is assure Aizawa-sensei is the only one who hears about it, and the conference room is the best way to ensure that. Anyone could walk into the classroom, but he's sure people will think twice about interrupting an official meeting in a conference room. "All right." The man nods. "Come with me." There's a nauseating mix of sinking guilt and hopefulness swirling around in his stomach as he follows his teacher through the halls. He hasn't even said anything yet, but he still feels like he's betraying All Might. But on the other hand, he can't be the only living person who knows about this. He doesn't want to carry this alone anymore, or have it wedge further between his own inching growth of being able to handle One for All, and how his peers are flourishing with their quirks, thriving under Aizawa-sensei's teachings. Izuku just wants to be like them. He wants his teachers to know he belongs in this class with his peers. He wishes he'd gotten a chance to run it by All Might. But since the pro has been busy with teaching classes and using what little of his strength he's got left to parade around town as the symbol of peace, Izuku hadn't found a chance to talk to him. And, honestly, he doesn't want All Might to tell him no. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? Izuku's hands ring together as he follows the man through the hallways. His knees feel weak as he matches his teacher's pace, careful to stay just a step or two behind him. He'd never been in the teacher's office, nor had he been in the conference rooms. Neither of them speak as Aizawa-sensei brings him to the teacher's office, holding the door and ushering Izuku in when the boy hesitates outside the room, before leading him deeper into the office. Sensei knows exactly where he's going as they bypass rows of desks, leading Izuku into one of 3 doorways, spaced along the wall, all 3 of which Izuku suspects to be soundproof conference rooms. Izuku spots a couple of teachers in the office as they hurry past. He sees Present Mike and the R-rated hero Midnight, who teaches them modern hero art history, sat at 2 desks beside each other. He thinks he sees Snipe and 13 too, but he hasn't really met them yet, since they don't teach any of his classes. And he's a little too busy trying not to throw up due to nerves to seriously be identifying everyone in the room as much as he'd love to fanboy. Honestly, he's just trying to keep himself upright, lest he fall over in front of all these pro-heroes. He might actually have to drop out of school if he embarrassed himself that badly. Finally, having some mercy on Izuku's poor pounding heart, Aizawa-sensei slides one of the conference room doors open and gestures Izuku inside, before he steps in after him and closes the door behind them for privacy. Some of the unease melts away, but Izuku's still pretty nervous to be alone in here with Aizawa-sensei. There are 2 couches on either side of a coffee table settled between them. Aizawa-sensei slinks to one, plopping down, as Izuku follows his lead and settles awkwardly on the couch across from the man. Izuku's holding himself stiffly as the pro all but melts into the couch. Izuku wonders how the man can be so calm, but then again, it's not Aizawa-sensei, who's about to spill a confidential secret, is it? Is this a bad idea? Either way, it's too late to back out now. The silence in the room rings in Izuku's ears, and it takes an embarrassingly long amount of time for Izuku to realize that Aizawa-sensei is leaving the meeting in Izuku's hands completely. He's letting Izuku guide this meeting. Izuku had asked to speak about his own quirk, so it makes sense that the man would draw back. After all, why would Aizawa-sensei lead a meeting that Izuku requested? What had he gotten himself into? The boy takes another second to collect his thoughts, trying to organize what he's going to say without spilling too much and actually betraying the #1 hero. He'd already had that problem, first with Kachan and then with Oboro too. He wants his teacher to understand, but not at the risk of destroying the trust All Might has in him. Izuku breaks the silence, voice carefully devoid of emotion. He can't help but hesitate nervously when he realizes how intently his teacher is studying him. I'm not that good at using my quirk. Well, as you've seen in classes, and during the entrance exam and other tests, it hurts my body. It's so powerful. Aizawa-sensei's gaze is focused on Izuku, but it's not prying, like Izuku expected. Sensei is watching him like he's trying to understand what Izuku's saying, probably trying to figure out where this conversation is heading and why they're even having this meeting in the first place. Okay. The man finally lets out when Izuku makes no move to add anything more, the man's voice low. I know all of this already, Midoriya. I've seen what your quirk does to you, and I know it's powerful simply by what it does to your body when you use it. The teen shuts his eyes, forcing out a slow breath that he hopes might calm his nerves a little. It doesn't, as his hand tightens into a fist, to the point his knuckles start to blanch to a pasty white. There's something about my quirk that I should tell you. His teacher is silent across from him, letting him wade through the conversation however he can. Izuku silently wishes his teacher would have mercy on him and take the reins, but he's starting to realize that's not how Aizawa-sensei rolls. I know it doesn't really seem like I've been putting in as much effort as my peers during training, Izuku admits, finally forcing his eyes open, but refusing to look up at his teacher. Instead, Izuku keeps his eyes locked on his fist in his lap, slowly unclenching his muscles. Everyone has been working so hard, pushing themselves to the limits with their quirks, and I see that they're making progress in a way I'm not. But I am trying, Sensei, honest. I'm working hard too, it's different for me, Sensei. Different how? Izuku looks up in surprise, finding his teacher's gaze focused on him, alert and cautious. He must have already acknowledged that there's something different about Izuku's quirk, too. Had he just been waiting for Izuku to make the first move? The answer to his question, though, is not a simple one. There's a lot that makes this different. One for all, for one. How he'd gotten his quirk after growing up quirkless all his life. How recently he'd gotten said quirk. The power that he's unused to, that had been thrust into his hands before he really knew what to do with it. How it feels like he's learning one for all by taking one step forwards, followed by 3 steps backwards. How afraid he is of all this power. How terrified he is that he'll never live up to All Might's legacy no matter how hard he tries. I'm afraid, Izuku admits, whispering the words just slightly above his own breath. He can feel his heart pounding at the quiet admission. It's beating so hard he can hear the thumps in his own ears. Aizawa-sensei leans forward, eyes narrowing in on him. You're afraid, the teacher repeats uncertainly. Of? My quirk. Izuku's gaze is back down on his hand, fingers clenching in a fist before flattening out repeatedly, a repetition that almost calms him down. I don't know how to use it, Sensei. I'm afraid I'll hurt someone or myself worse than I already have. I've been trying to understand it, but I don't know how. I don't get it. His sensei is thoughtfully quiet, unwavering gaze on Izuku's face. When his gaze does move, it's just down to where Izuku is still tensing and relaxing his fist, and his gaze only lingers for a second. He watches the motion repeat itself, eyes narrowing faintly before his gaze drifts back up to Izuku's face. Izuku would give anything in this moment to know what his teacher was thinking. They didn't teach you how to control this in Quirk counseling. The man finally speaks, sounding as confused as he looks. Or in Quirk training. It's been a few years since I went to school, but I'm sure that's still something they do. Especially for someone with such a powerful quirk. Being afraid of your quirk is dangerous. You'll never reach your true potential if you're scared of yourself. The teen winces, wringing his hands together instead. He sucks in a breath, shaking his head nervously. I never went, Sensei. Never. Staggered confusion curls his tone as he breathes the word out. It's enough to have the boy looking up quickly, surprised to see the blatant shock on his teacher's face. The emotion's gone as fast as it appeared, but Izuku's still reeling from seeing it. The man's voice is tight when he speaks again. You didn't do any. None. No, Sensei. The boy whispers guiltily. Why didn't you go? His teacher's voice is stern. The annoyance from the first day back, it's sharper now. Izuku recoils slightly at his teacher's sharp demand, catching himself doing it before he can really react. He forces himself to keep still, even if he's got half a mind to curl into himself shamefully. He has a feeling that won't do anything but annoy his teacher, though, so he doesn't move. It wasn't offered. The teen swallows hard, nervous eyes flicking to look at his teacher before jumping away just as fast. Not to me, Sensei. Quirkless kids don't need quirk training or counseling. It's rather redundant. Everyone thought it was a waste of time and funds for someone like me to see the counselor, so I wasn't allowed. You're not quirkless, his teacher retorts with an unamused look. Despite the expression, his words are suddenly uncertain. Tell me you're joking, Midoriya. I really wish I could, Sensei. Izuku whispers nervously, shaking his head. I never got my quirk growing up. He doesn't bother mentioning the fact that he was diagnosed medically quirkless at age 4. He's not sure how he'd cover that up. The toe joint doesn't lie, right? He thinks Aizawa-sensei would look into that if Izuku did bring it up, and he doesn't want that. How would he explain having a quirk when it's biologically impossible for him to have one? When? The sternness in the question surprises Izuku a little. Izuku's shoulders square up, wide eyes jerking to look at his teacher, but he can't read anything in the man's expression. His words had been hard, but not necessarily angry. Demanding, sure, but there's not irritation, annoyance, or anything else Izuku is used to seeing on the man's face. His lips are simply pressed into a straight line, eyes boring into Izuku's own, as the man waits expectantly for an answer. When? He'd asked. But what did he mean? When what? Sensei. When? He repeats, voice unchanging. When did you get your quirk, Midoriya? The teenager hesitates, fiddling with his own fingers. Aizawa-sensei doesn't demand again, but he doesn't offer anything else either. It's clear this isn't something Izuku can step around. His teacher is waiting for an answer, demanding one. Does it matter, Sensei? It does. The man levels a stern look. Of course it matters. When did your quirk manifest, Midoriya? The day of the entrance exam. His teacher sucks in a breath like Izuku had sucker punched him in the stomach. His eyes widen, but unlike Izuku when he's surprised, his gaze doesn't stray from Izuku's face. Neither say anything for a second. Izuku feels so out of his depth at the complete 360 this meeting has taken, while Aizawa-sensei looks completely shell-shocked. It takes a second for his teacher to finally move again. The shock drains from his face, and then he's back to that expressionless neutral he wears in class. If it weren't for the glint of sudden understanding in the man's eyes, Izuku would think the past conversation hadn't even happened. So, let me get this straight. The teacher's tone is blank. Izuku's not sure whether to be terrified of the tone or thankful it's not blatant anger. You got your quirk on the morning of the entrance exam. I assume used it for, I'm going to guess, the first time taking out the 0-pointer, which broke both your legs and your arm. The man glances at Izuku as if to verify he's on the right track before continuing. You then proceeded to change your quirk status before school started, so the fact that you were quirkless before that point wouldn't show up on your school record, unless someone dug for it. Then showed up to my class after, what, 2 weeks of having your quirk? No counseling, no coach training. Nothing. Yes, Sensei. Izuku wheezes out in confirmation, suddenly feeling like this is a horrible idea. Why had he let Oboro talk him into this? Where the hell even was Oboro? He's expecting his teacher to stand up then and there, expel him on the spot, and escort him out of the building with a threat to never return. He's expecting yelling, anger, no, rage. He's expecting a lot of things, but what he's not expecting is for his teacher to all but melt back into the couch with a snort of laughter. It's nothing but an amused exhale, really, which is followed by a deep and heavy-sounding sigh. The man drags a palm down his face, rubbing hard at his eye as he pushes himself back up. Tired eyes back on Izuku. I knew there was something wrong. The man admits, shoulder slumping inward tiredly. Right from the second you punched that robot, rendering yourself useless, you and that quirk, I knew there was something off about it. That there was something off about you, Midoriya. I just didn't expect it was something like this. You've only had your quirk for a month. 4 weeks. His teacher clicks his tongue distastefully. Frankly, Midoriya. And here it comes. You're expelled. I'm impressed. Izuku jolts upright, gaze instantly finding his teacher's waiting gray eyes. Hang on. What now? He's not sure, but he thinks he might mumble a starstruck. What? Don't get me wrong. The man sighs, rubbing at his eyes again. I'm obviously not happy, of course. I should have been made aware of this from day one for your safety and your classmates' safety. It would have drastically changed my lesson plan for you, and I could have arranged proper counseling sessions for you as well. This course, my lessons, are geared towards students who already have a general handle on their capabilities. But I am impressed nonetheless. It's honestly surprising you've managed to keep up with my class as well as you have been, considering how recently you got your quirk, and how little practice you've had controlling it. Impressed. Aizawa-sensei was impressed. Izuku had impressed his sensei. That said, the man's tone changes, sterner, but calm at the same time. It almost matches the one from that first day, but it's also completely different. Izuku's not afraid anymore. Not telling me your homeroom and hero studies teacher was reckless and illogical, Midoriya. I understand this is a sensitive situation. A Quirk coming in so late is rare, but you should have been put right into Quirk training and counseling, which you will be now. You've done well thus far, but there's a large margin for improvement. Izuku bobs his head in an agreeing nod. That's honestly really fair, and he's already aware that those things should have already happened. Oboro had made that quite clear. And he'd already known as much anyways, before the ghost had started interfering. He knows counseling and training are the first steps taken when a child first manifests their quirk. He'd seen all his classmates in elementary school go to their counseling, and he'd seen how much those lessons had truly aided their development. He knew it helped, just he wasn't really in the position to ask for it. So, Izuku clears his throat. I won't be expelled then? There had been a lull in the conversation. Izuku knows it's not finished yet, but this is a question he'd been stressing over since the words, "I'm afraid," had left his mouth. He refuses to let himself be blindsided, to think everything was good only for his sensei to expel him despite his words. Izuku wants confirmation. No. Sensei huffs, eyes flicking to meet Izuku's. I saw potential in you, Midoriya. It would be illogical to lie about that. I saw potential in a quirk that I thought you had the barest of control over, which I come to find out is completely true. You have a lot of work to do. You'll need to catch up to your peers. But I do see potential. It's a start. A wave of determination rushes through his chest. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to become a hero, Sensei. I don't doubt that. The man shrugs, leaning back against the couch. Now, about that training and counseling. I'll personally be handling your quirk training. Neither of us knows what you're capable of. So it's best that I'm there to erase your quirk if it gets out of hand, or if I think you're in danger. I've done quirk training in the past, so I'm capable of it. And as for your counseling, that'll be done with the school's guidance counselor, Hound Dog. He'll be briefed on need-to-know information, which is really just how recently you manifested your quirk. He'll also take some time to chat with you in a more casual setting, like I mentioned last week. I think you would benefit from talking to someone. Izuku mulls that over. But I won't get expelled. No problem, child, comes the tired response. You won't be getting expelled. Not for this. I won't punish you for something that can't be helped. I'm just glad you told me before I did something stupid. There won't be any repercussions, though this will change some aspects of class for you. Don't expect me to go easy on you either. You're training to be a hero. I'm still going to treat you as such. I'm not going to treat you any differently than any of my other students, so if you're slacking off or wasting my time, you'll be dealt with accordingly. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei. Izuku can't help but mumble gratefully. He bows his upper body and ducks his head down respectfully. He hadn't wanted any special treatment to come out of this. He'd actually been worried it might have changed something. He needed some help, and he didn't know where else to find some. He needed someone who knows quirks, someone who actually has the time to help him learn. He's beyond grateful for everything All Might has done for him, everything the man has been trying to do since he'd given Izuku One for All. He appreciates their quick check-ins, those passing moments where the #1 hero bestows nuggets of wisdom onto him, and appreciates the insight he's being offered. He knows All Might is trying, but he's got an image to uphold, and fans to think about, and his teaching had to be prioritized now, and he's got a bunch of other responsibilities on his plate, too. He can't do everything all at once. Izuku knows he comes second to all of that. Don't thank me, problem child. Sensei snorts, waving him off with a tired flap of his hand. I expect great things from you, so don't let me down. Got it? Now that I know what's up with your quirk, I expect to see a lot of progress in the upcoming weeks. I won't. Izuku perks up confidently. I promise, Sensei, I won't let you down. I'll work hard and prove that I belong in your class. Izuku blinks owlishly as his eyes find his teacher's face, and he thinks, for a second, that his eyes are playing tricks on him because, if he's not mistaken, that's a smile on his sensei's face. It's tiny, hardly even there, but he's sure the corners of his lips have curled the slightest bit upwards. He's never seen his sensei smile before. He doesn't even think his sensei is the type to actually smile. Overwhelmed by the sight of it, Izuku throws himself into another bow, feeling his eyes water traitorously. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me and listening to me. I'm not sure what I would have done if you hadn't. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me. The man counters, and when Izuku looks up, the smile is gone from his teacher's face. Maybe he hadn't seen it after all? Though, I do wish you would have told me sooner, and I am curious to know what compelled you to tell me now all of a sudden. You look like you were on a mission standing outside my classroom. Izuku rubs the back of his neck anxiously, lips twitching into a smile as he thinks of the persistent ghost who was going to be over the moon at his victory. A friend convinced me, actually. He was very concerned when he found out, which I guess was valid. He was just really persistent that I tell someone. You specifically. I guess he made the right call. Oh? The man cocks his head in interest. He looks like he wants to ask more questions, but instead, he looks away from the teenager, bangs falling into his face as he moves. Your friend is smart, then. Why me specifically? For that one, all Izuku can do is shrug apologetically, because he really doesn't know. Oboro hadn't told him why he was so insistent that it was Aizawa-sensei who was the chosen one to be told his secret, besides the fact that he was hell-bent on convincing Izuku that his new sensei was a good teacher in person. He doesn't want to tell his sensei that, though, especially when Aizawa-sensei was clever and observant. Don't bring something up that you can't answer any questions about. It's an expression he all but lived by at this point. I'm not sure, Sensei. Izuku offers instead. The man lets out a hum, quiet for another moment. He seems a little lost in thought, but Izuku doesn't dare disturb him. After a second, the man looks towards Izuku, studies his face, then looks away again. He really looks like he wants to ask more questions, but seems to think better of it. Or maybe he's just decided that Izuku probably won't answer much else today. His expression is a mixture of confusion and interest, but he doesn't ask anything. It's late, the man finally says, huffing the words out as he stands from the couch. The dark-haired man stretches his back out when he's stood, doing so in a way that Izuku can't help think resembles a cat. I'm sure your mother must be wondering where you are by now, so you should head home, problem child. Right. Izuku forces himself up too, shuffling his feet nervously as he follows his sensei to the door. He knows his mother isn't wondering where he is. He doubts she's even home, that she has any awareness whatsoever that he's not in the apartment already. He really doesn't think she even cares what he gets up to anymore. Still, he bows his head. Thank you again, Aizawa-sensei. His teacher gives a grunt of acknowledgement before pushing the door open for them, finally glancing down at Izuku over his nose. We'll sort out everything else on Monday. I only have so much time before my patrol, and I don't want to spend it scheduling. Either in the morning or after school. Whichever you prefer, I'll be here. Okay. Another thank you sits on the tip of his tongue, but he bites it back. His teacher is already giving him a look of growing annoyance. Izuku doesn't think he'd appreciate being overly thanked, as thankful as Izuku truly is. Do thank yous start to lose meaning if you overdo it? He's not sure. I'll come earlier on Monday, if that's all right. Izuku offers the man a crooked smile. Have a good weekend, Sensei. Yeah, that's fine. Aizawa-sensei huffs out tiredly. You too, problem child. Now, off you go. Shoo. The teacher's office is cleared out, Izuku realizes when he peeks his head out. The room is mostly bare, besides present Mike and, of course, Oboro, who he finds sitting on the floor across from the doorway Izuku now hesitates in. You know, the ghost jerks upright when the door opens. Tone a knowing tease as he pushes himself to his feet. He's grinning, widely, obnoxiously wide, and Izuku knows exactly where the ghost is leading without him needing to say it. The ghost's grin just widens when he catches Izuku's blank look. I definitely don't want to be that person, but I totally told you so. Uh-huh. Izuku manages to draw out under his breath, shooting the ghost an eye roll, even though he has a small, thankful smile on his lips, too. Izuku feels his teacher brush against him as he slips out the door, and it's just then that Izuku realizes he'd stopped in the doorway at spotting Oboro. Sorry, Sensei, Izuku yelps hurriedly, bowing apologetically. His teacher flaps a tired hand at him, dismissing his rudeness easily, moving into the teacher's office where he bends down by one of the desks and grabs his yellow sleeping bag that he's always using in class, but never during training, from under it. That must be his desk. It's right beside Present Mike's, or the desk Present Mike had been sitting in earlier. It hits Izuku all at once how out of place he must look standing in the middle of the teacher's offices. He clears his throat, embarrassment lifting to his cheeks when the action draws in both teachers' attention. Izuku flashes them both a nervous smile. Thank you once again, Sensei. And have a good weekend, Mike Sensei. Oh, you too, Aizawa Sensei, but I already told you that in the conference room. Present Mike offers a good-natured laugh, grinning widely at Izuku, and even Aizawa-sensei doesn't appear annoyed anymore. Maybe just a bit exasperated. But in, the fond way? Still, it's a step up from how his teacher usually looks at him, so Izuku counts it as a win. The two teachers exchange a quick look before they're both looking back at Izuku. Thank you, little listener. Mike-sensei cheers brightly. You have a good weekend as well. Eraser here kept you far too long. Best get home now before your folks get worried, you hear? Technically, Sensei drawled before Izuku could respond. He kept me far too long. The dark-haired teacher flicks Mike-sensei on his leather jacket-covered shoulder as he walks past with his sleeping bag hooked over his arm. I didn't force him here, he asked. Don't blame our innocent little student, Eraser. Midoriya's a dear. He's a problem child. He's a dear. Problem child. Izuku subtly angles his head to catch Oboro's attention, the ghost looking away from the bantering teachers as if sensing Izuku's gaze on him. The ghost looks both amused and annoyed at the display, but he smiles nonetheless. He almost looks done with the two teachers' antics, but at the same time he looks greatly entertained by it too. At least Izuku's not the only one who finds this odd. Thank you. Izuku smiles softly when the half-hearted bickering between the two dies down as he moves toward the door now, Oboro on his heel, no doubt wanting to talk, and probably boast more about being right again. For the well wishes, Mike-sensei. And I will, but I doubt my mother will be worried. The two teachers share a look that Izuku doesn't catch as he turns to open the door. Oboro shoots a hopeful look at the two teachers, praying they'll hear the same truth in the words as he does, that they'll figure it out, even if Izuku hadn't intentionally meant to give anything away of his living situation. Oboro knows the kid doesn't consider his home life unhealthy, but it is. And hopefully his friends will hear the same worrying sentiment in Izuku's words that he does. He deflates when Shota opens his mouth, though. Have a good night, problem child. Don't forget about Monday. I won't, Izuku chirps back, waving at the two with a smile. Hisashi returns the wave with just as much enthusiasm, but Shota merely cocks an eyebrow as he steps into his sleeping bag on the other side of the room by the couch. Izuku bows his head politely, offering a cheerful, "Bye, senseis." And then the kid's gone through the door. "You two are so unbelievably dense. I can't even with you idiots. Ugh, I guess some things never really change." Oboro stews for just a second, groaning to himself. He lingers for another long second, shooting an unnoticed glare of exasperation between his two friends before he hurries through the shut door after his new friend. "Hey, Zuku, wait up!" There's a moment of silence in the teacher's office as Shota pulls up his sleeping bag, zipping it up to his chin before tucking his hood up until he's nothing more than a face and stray black hairs. "I don't like this, Sashi." Shota breaks the silence, shaking his head as he collapses on the couch. Hisashi trails after him, settling down on the couch as well. "Don't like what?" Hisashi looks down at him, leaning back against the couch for a bit of relaxation before leaving for the radio station. They always took the first little while after school to chill, before Hisashi would leave, and Shota would catch all the sleep he could until his patrol. The teachers tended to clear out pretty fast, unless there was a meeting or something, so they could count on the office being quiet. There's something different about that kid. I can't put my finger on what. The man shook his head as he inched towards his husband. Hisashi's hand settled on top of his sleeping bag-covered head, just resting it there. "I don't think he's got the best home life either, but that's not what's off about him. That's just what I've noticed. I don't know." "Well?" Hisashi hums thoughtfully. "What makes you say that?" Shota frowns deeply. "His mother didn't come in after the battle exercises. The kid broke his arm, had his other arm burnt to a crisp, and he lost consciousness. Shizenji couldn't even reach the kid's mother. If it was my kid, I damn well would have shown up for him. He walked home with those injuries, Sashi." "And he mentioned her not being worried just now." Hisashi frowns. The voice hero chews on his bottom lip, lost in his thoughts. "We can't start prying into his life until we have reasons to. Midoriya shows up, and he performs well in his classes, even if he is a little spacey at times. He's friendly and put together. There's nothing to be overly concerned about yet. Nothing that would prompt an emergency parent-teacher meeting or a wellness check. You know that. It wouldn't be logical." "Doesn't feel right." The darker-haired man snapped tiredly, letting his eyes slip shut. "No," Hisashi agrees with a shake of his head. "But our hands are tied. None of the other teachers have brought it up. He hasn't brought it up. We can't overstep, even if I trust your gut feeling more than anything. I see what you mean, but we've got a unique perspective." "You could just be projecting onto Midoriya." "Shush, I know you're not, but Nezu might think so. He knew you when we attended school here." Shota had opened his mouth to refute the projecting statement, but it promptly snapped shut when Hisashi all but read his mind, quieting him before he could even speak. He'd been a lot like Midoriya when he attended classes here. Went through his own bout of family drama that hindered his studies. He'd kept quiet, too. Hadn't wanted anyone else in his business. His problems were his problems, until the point where everything had come to light, despite his attempts at keeping it quiet. He grimaced at the thought, but didn't say anything, letting Hisashi finish his thoughts. "If we're going to do anything, we're going to do it on his terms. Keep an eye on him. I will, too. And if—" "When?" Shota scoffs, cutting his husband off with a more realistic word choice. "All right," the blonde huffs fondly, patting Shota's head placatingly. "And when something comes up, we'll intervene then. If someone had started stepping on your toes back then, you would have recoiled instantly. Let's not chase Midoriya away before we even have the chance to help him. If you see a resemblance, don't make the mistakes others made when it came to you. Kids can be skittish. You were. Okay, fine. Whatever. Shota huffs, turning slightly in his sleeping bag. He's not happy with the outcome, but he understands it. Izashi is right, even down to the presumption of how Shota knows he would have reacted had one of his own teachers pressed him about his home life growing up. It was bad enough trying to keep Oboro and Hizashi quiet about it. He didn't need a teacher sticking their nose in his business. But at the first sign of trouble, Shota says, I'll be getting involved. And you won't be alone, Hizashi snorts, patting his partner on the head again. Now, you rest for patrol tonight. I've got to head over to the radio station to get ready for my show now. It'll be a great one, so listen if you get a chance. I'll see you after your patrol tonight. Love your show. Love you. Shota grunts out, squeezing his eyes shut. He knows his cheeks flare at the soft exchange, and that's only made worse by how Hizashi giggles at his misery. Shota forces his eyes open, again to glare up at his shifting husband. I hate you. If that's true, you've got a funny way of showing it, Sho. The blonde grins, leaning over to peck him on the lips before standing up. Stay safe tonight, you hear? You too. And then the blonde is gone, leaving Shota to try and get some rest. Which is hard, considering how his thoughts keep lingering on a certain student who he now has to defeatedly admit is his newest problem child. All right, listeners, this concludes the second half to Chapter 4 of Yuuei Survival Guide. Chapter 5 will be up next. I adore this chapter because we are getting to a place where Aizawa is starting to get more pieces to this puzzle that is his new student, and the fact that Midoriya is learning that some of the preconceived ideas he has about teachers from his experiences, which are valid, are shifting, as Aizawa proves him wrong in some instances, and Oboro continuing to champion for Aizawa to have that trust build between him and Izuku. As well as in the background, we're seeing some of these other interactions with Hizashi and Aizawa as they're starting to piece together more pieces as well on Izuku's home life and seeing some of these red flags that the kid is giving off. So drop your comments below for me. Let me know what you all thought about this one and the entirety of the fic so far. Just a reminder as well that this fic is located on AO3, so you can always slide over leaving comments, kudos, and support to the original author as well. I'm sure it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.